What's up guys, and welcome to my review of the Toaks Titanium Alcohol Stove. First and foremost, let's check out the weight. Now there are three different components to the stove. You've got the stove itself, you've got the mesh pot stand for the stove, and you've got the windshield for the stove. The stove by itself comes in at 20 grams, the pot stand at 23 grams, and the windshield with its little bag comes in at 18 grams. So altogether, total of 60 grams for the stove. Alright, next up, let's go fill the pot up with 2 cups of water, so half a litre, and see how long it takes the burner to boil it. So just as we are approaching the 7-minute mark, we are finally starting to see some boiling water, and honestly I would call that a roaring boil. So the Toaks stove boiling 2 cups of water, which is half a litre, on a reasonably windy day, although it is well protected by the windshield, in a little under 7 minutes. Alright, so now that we've done the weight and the burn test, it's time to kind of go over the stove a little bit. I'll tell you what I think, the pros, the cons, etc. And I know the burn test probably wasn't the best one out there. In fact, I know it wasn't the best one out there. There's a really good burn test if you're looking for a very scientific approach. The metho is measured out, it's controlled temperature water, everything is, as controlled as possible. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it to my video, and I'm actually going to talk about that video shortly when I get to the stand here. But anyway, let's start off with the positives. Number one, this thing is light. It is definitely one of the lighter alcohol stoves out there. Not quite as light as the penny stoves out there, which you can make from the Coke cans, but it's lighter than Trangia's, and it's definitely lighter than a fair few other alcohol stoves, so that's a big plus. If you include the pot stand and the windshield that I have here, definitely it starts to add up a little bit more. You don't need these accessories. You can use things like rocks or sticks or dirt or whatever to create the stand for the pot, and also to create the windshield, but it makes it easy and they don't weigh too much. If anything, I might replace the windshield and just wrap some aluminium foil around this pot stand. I probably don't need a full encircled windshield most of the time, very rarely. I can use my pack or some rocks or some other feature or something to create the extra little windbreak if I need it, but some aluminium foil which weighs a gram or 2 will be probably enough to replace the windshield. So I might do that and test that soon, see how it goes on my next trip. The other big plus about it is that it's fast to bloom. What I mean by bloom is prime bloom, whatever it is you want to call it. It's ready to go really quickly, especially compared to other alcohol stoves like your Trangia or your cat food can stove or your penny stove or what have you. This thing, you pour the metho in there, you light it, and it's pretty much good to go straight away, which is awesome. Metho obviously takes a little bit longer to cook, so the fact that you can just light it and pretty much put your pot on there straight away saves a little bit of time, and you can go off and you can set up your shelter or do whatever it is you want to do and not wait for it to bloom and then put the pot on, etc. So I found that to be a really big plus. One great advantage of this stove, it's a positive, but it has a little negative, and I feel it's an easy fix. It's actually pretty easy to pour the metho back into the bottle with this stove, but they can make it even easier by putting a little tiny lip on on the stove here. So if they were to put a little tiny lip on the edge of the stove, it would make pouring much easier. But as it is, it's actually reasonably easy to pour metho back into a bottle as compared to other alcohol stoves. So if you are worried about putting too much metho in or not enough or whatever, put in a little bit more, cook your food. It's easy enough to smother and put out because the burners are all on the inside, the little capillary holes on the inside of the stove. You just need something flat to put over the stove and then put it out straight away. So it's really easy to put out, and you can simply pour the remaining metho back into the bottle once everything has cooled down. Going back to the weight and the size a little bit, everything fits inside my kit really easily inside my MSR cooking pot. As to be expected with stoves these days, especially alcohol stoves, they don't take up a lot of room, but it's good to know, and it's handy that everything fits inside that pot really comfortably without too much of a hassle. So getting on to the negatives, it's really quite frustrating that the stand itself is not actually the right height. I mentioned before that I would talk a little bit more about the stand and the video where the guy does a really scientific approach to testing the burner out, how long it takes, how efficient it is, etc. He's got a theory that the most efficient way to use this stove, or the fastest way to boil water, it's not exactly the most efficient, is to have the pot 1 inch above the burner itself. This stand, you get the pot 1.5 inches above. So in his videos, and I'll link the videos like I mentioned before, he tests with the burner on the ground and the pot 1.5 inches above the burner, so it's pretty much on the stand, times it, etc. Then he raises the burner 1/2 inch to create that 1 inch gap, and the water actually boils significantly quicker. Like, it's not a second or 2 or 5 seconds, it's a fair bit quicker. So it's really interesting to see how a little bit of a difference in height adjustment, what that does to boil times. I really don't know what Toaks was, what the theory is between the height, whether it's 1.5 inches deliberately, and what the thinking behind that is, especially when a 1 inch gap is actually more efficient and boils a lot quicker. But maybe they had a reason. I haven't been able to find it, and no one seems to know what that reason is from the research that I've done. So I'm kind of stuck with, whenever I use this, I have to try and find, it's as simple as getting some sticks or a rock, or even scooping up some dirt together to try and create the 1 inch gap rather than having the 1.5 inch gap there. It does make a significant difference. So that's quite a frustrating thing, and definitely a negative. The last kind of negative is cost. It's not a cheap stove, but then again, what ultralight stuff is cheap. But when you consider that you can make a cat food can stove or a penny stove for literally like $5, for all of this, you're looking at pretty much spending $49. So it's $35 for the stove, $11 for the windshield, and $3 for the stand. This is from the Toaks website, which I purchased it from. So $49 for everything. It's definitely not the most expensive stove out there, but again, in the grand scheme of things, when you can do things a lot cheaper and get really similar results, it's definitely a negative that it is that expensive. But for the money, you are getting a really good quality product. So, take that for what it is. So that's pretty much it for my video review of the Toaks stove. I hope you guys got something out of it. If I missed anything, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you got something out of this video, a thumbs up is much appreciated. But as always, happy hiking, guys, and see you on the next video.